East and Africa at Twitter. And as the company says, travel is a huge part of the Twitter conversation. And the microblogging network has recently started working with brands in the sector. Very interesting development, I'm sure you'll all be interested in. How can travel companies best use the network and examples of best practice in the industry, as well as how the company is tapping into users tweeting while watching television, as we all do. It's one of those secrets. So I'd like to welcome on stage Aoife Desmond, and I'd like you to give her a big hand. And here she is. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. You can hear me okay? Good. So the first time I was at WTM was back in 2005. And back then, I was a fresh-faced marketeer working for Visit Scotland. And little did I know that I would be here today talking about how the travel cycle has completely evolved in online booking and mobile. So delighted to be here today. I think one thing that has stayed the same has been the amazingly international vibe and buzz that you get the minute you walk in. And it always takes my breath away a little bit that we're surrounded by people who are so passionate about this industry. And I still very much feel part of this industry, although I've moved into tech along the way. So in order to keep engaged with that, travel has been something at the forefront of my mind through tech. And while at Twitter and previously at Facebook, I've always worked with travel brands to see how we can support you in what is one of the most exciting verticals on Twitter. So as it wouldn't be Twitter without a hashtag and follow, so feel free to follow me. If you have any questions afterwards, I will respond to them as soon as I can. And feel free to tweet at Twitter Travel throughout the presentation. So my agenda today is really to look at three key industry challenges as I see them and how Twitter can map to them to help you to solve them to some degree. The second area of my presentation is really around building brand relevance in real time, because if we look at how the market has evolved and branding has evolved over the last probably 5 years, I recall the statement by Rory Sutherland from Ogilvy that there is no longer target markets, but target moments. So how do you embrace these target moments to make sure that your brand is relevant, and what travel brands are already doing so with impact? And then lastly, I'm going to move into Twitter mobile marketing because as Steve kindly introduced, this is the first time that we've been at World Travel Market. So we know that a lot of you are probably already on Twitter, but we understand that many of you aren't yet. So I want to tell you a little bit about our product offering. So first of all, industry challenges. I've broken this down into three. As I see it, brand relevance is a key, not only for travel brands, but for all brands. How can you continue to be relevant in this exponentially changing era? So, today is not going to be the same as tomorrow, and the strategies that you've been planning over the last 12 months for today may not be relevant again in 3 weeks' time. And when I look back to being a marketeer in travel, we were very, very based around the calendar year. We had our flights, we understood where the seasonal peaks and troughs were. But Twitter really is all about the moment and what's happening in the moment. And really, I want to give you some examples of how great travel brands have been able to embrace that and the results that they've seen as a result of doing that. The second is about anticipating consumer needs. I'm going to draw here on how you can use the Twittersphere, the chatter that is already happening on Twitter every day around travel, and anticipate what your consumers might need before they're even aware of that. And then we'll look at putting mobile first at the heart of your strategy. So first of all, building brand relevance with Twitter. If you haven't already checked out Skift's series of CEO interviews, I highly, highly recommend them. Perhaps there's someone from Skift here today, but it's an excellent series of insights into the travel industry. And if I look at one of the individuals that I've read a lot about over the last kind of 18 months, it's Fritz von Paschen. I think you're probably going to come away with this thinking I have a bit of a work crush on him. I probably do. Amazing visionary. He sees the future. He sees that we can no longer be complacent and just rest on what's worked before. We need to constantly innovate, anticipate, and change. And I would say that Starwood is one of the travel brands that is living in beta. They're thinking in beta. They're thinking, what is changing and how do I respond to that? So I'm gonna draw on a great quote from Van Patten, which is around the biggest challenge today that is facing travel brands as he sees it. And I completely agree. It's how to stay relevant and ahead of people's changing expectations. So if we look at Twitter in that context, Twitter is all about live, public, and conversational. I'm going to go through those 3 pillars because this is something that really sets Twitter apart from every other platform. I'm going to play just a really short video to give you a sense of the live, how crucial marketing in the moment is. To see if it's working.
I got this call from my wife saying, I've just seen this tweet, you must look at this right away. David Cameron tweeted a photograph of himself, holding a telephone to his ear and looking serious. The brilliant Rob Delaney tweeted a photograph of him with a tube of toothpaste in his hand instead of a telephone. So I looked around and there was a tube of wet wipes. Well, it exploded. I think there is a hunger for this in-the-moment excitement. It connects them to events. It connects them to people instantly.
Whether it's the news, TV, film, politics, or brands, they're all trying to do the same thing. React to the speed and pace and change of culture.
We have to lose that idea that we are more creative than consumers. We have to respect that they're equals now.
I really love the idea of putting things out there and then mining how people are reacting to that thing.
When Harry killed Sally.
Publishing a story used to kind of be an endpoint. In many ways, publishing a story today is really the beginning.
It's so much more than a transaction. It is a conversation, and all those conversations are coming together in a way that makes it so much bigger.
There's something really provocative about the idea that you can connect to somebody in the moment when it's most relevant to them.
Fortune will favour the bold. Fortune will favour the brands, the people, the writers, the directors, the craftsmen and women who can obviously embrace this.
If we look at who are the bold in travel, it's very much about looking at brands that are taking those moments, seizing those moments, and understanding how they can capitalize on them. Coming to the second strand, public. So there are 284 million active users on Twitter globally. 500 million tweets a day. So in the course of 2 days, we see 1 billion tweets. And just to put that in context, it took Twitter, which started as a microblogging platform when Jack sent the first tweet back in 2006. And it took 3 years, 2 months, and 1 day to reach that 1 billion. And now every second day, we're seeing that volume. So imagine the constant chatter, the constant buzz that you as travel marketeers can tap into to understand what your audience is saying about you, or whether you're completely irrelevant to your audience in this precise moment of time. And if we look at the conversational, this is the kind of conversation that you're seeing happening around hotels on a weekly basis in the US. So, spiking at just under 1.7 million tweets and mentions of hotels. Huge opportunity for both domestic and international tourism in the moment, to find people who are interested in what you have to say. And if we look at, I think you probably won't be surprised if you've been following KLM recently, who do we think at Twitter is the bold? Who do we see doing a great job of this? Well, undoubtedly KLM has really stepped forwards. Actually, probably a couple of years ago, I recall them making quite an internal shift from phone-based consumer service to actually redeploying people on the phones into a social media hub. And this is really paying off for them. So with this campaign, this was the Happy to Help campaign. The hashtag Happy to Help was the glue that bound the campaign together across channel. They employed 250 people to take part in this. It happened just 2 or 3 weeks ago in the middle of October, 5-day campaign. And these people were in a command center answering queries from not only their own customers, but also customers of other airlines who were experiencing problems. And responding to these in the moment, they actually shared, here we've ordered you a taxi to help you get to your flight on time. kind of moment. So they really engaged with the audience. And here's a little bit of the reaction. It's probably tiny for a lot of you at the back, but this individual had lost her luggage on the train, and she said, "I wish I had flown, #happy to help." Instead of considering her an irrelevant consumer because she's not flying, they actually tweeted her back, said, "Oh, that's a bummer. Give us your address and we'll send you something to tide you over while you're without your luggage." And Louise received a sweatshirt to keep her going overnight. So great opportunity to really humanize the brand in the moment and seize upon these moments to build brand loyalty over time. And why does that matter? Well, competitors, for example, picked up on the spirit as well and joined the buzz. So you can see here that Emirates had a promoted tweet around this trend. So they understood that this was like pretty phenomenal and had impact. And these are the results. So, 2 billion, just under 2 billion, 1.8 billion impressions for KLM in September and October, according to Topsy. Topsy is one of the social listening platforms that exists in the market. And you can see when KLM launches a campaign, Twitter reacts. Look at the spike here with 68 million impressions on the day the campaign launched. So on to the next trend, anticipating consumer needs. I'm going to go back to my work crush, who is Fritz, and say that looking ahead, all consumer brands that live in the age of great change have to know what you want and that you want it right now, and deliver that consistently and globally. So huge challenge for an international company of its stature, but they're doing it very well. And Starwood, for example, is launching room key activation through mobile, so that I don't have to go and stand in line and wait when I'm checking in quite late at night after a 9-hour flight. So they're really responding to consumer needs and anticipating that and adding value on, I would say, pretty much a daily basis. The rich conversation data that's now available for travel brands to tap into, to mine, is like never seen before. So the Brandwatch Travel and Hospitality report this year also had some great examples of Expedia Canada reacting in real time and anticipating that their consumers were not liking the creative strategy they had at that time. So they responded to that and actually changed it in the moment. And I think this is very much around listening to your consumers, not waiting 6 months to evaluate whether your campaign has worked. Every tweet and every engagement is basically sending you a signal about user intent and interest. So this isn't just confined to big brands, because I think many of you here might be thinking, oh, well, that's fine for Starwood. I'm sure they have a massive marketing budget. I don't. Well, there are opportunities to do this daily. I'm going to show you a personal example. My friend Gail, she was dining out in Dublin. If any of you have been in Dublin during the Web Summit or anything like that, you will know that it's a very busy city, despite its size. And Gail was trying to find a table for 6 at short notice. A local restaurant, San Lorenzo's, quickly saw this and quickly responded to say, hey, we have a table for you, why don't you join us? So, this is really in the power of everybody here in this room to be able to engage with consumers, to seize those opportunities, to cross the Twitter sphere and make it a human interaction with the consumer. Twitter really connects brands and consumers in real time, like no other platform. And here's a great example of Hyatt France. So Hyatt, as you probably know if you've stayed there, have excellent consumer service and luxury properties. They wanted to raise awareness of this in France, and they were working with the agency We Are Social. They came up with this great campaign, which was all about the concierge service. So this guy here who was created for the campaign is Amiable Hyatt. My French was never ever good. And Amiable Hyatt was responding to consumers at the rate of like 40 tweets a day during the campaign. They did a lot of activity around this, so they built it up in advance. They did a follower acquisition campaign at first. They promoted a trend, Hyatt a dream, so that they could build some momentum. And the results of that were that they were able to highly target in a French audience those who were interested in fashion, beauty, and travel, and connect with them. So you can see the results here of the campaign yourselves. It led to a 72% increase in brand mentions for Hyatt and a 10% engagement rate, which is about 10 times the average engagement rate we might see and about 3 times the average engagement rate we might see for travel. So great result. Now mobile. I'm sure that most of you have attended at least one of the talks in the last 2 days where mobile has been at the center of that. So I'm going to assume that that is the case. Mobile, looking at the way that's going, I'm going to share a little bit of data with you in terms of the time spent on mobile and tablets. And you can see that this is just doubling. But what we don't see is a shift in media spend to mobile yet. People are still quite siloed in terms of their thinking around mobile. Might have a mobile team that's looking at mobile, but mobile is ubiquitous across channel. And so it's really important that if you're thinking about your next campaign, you're understanding how you can put mobile first and have a mobile-centric campaign, or you're going to miss out on a huge opportunity. If we look at, say, TechCrunch or other data by the Business Intelligence, this is likely to account for $40 billion worth of US online travel spend in 2015. And this is just the mobile piece. And we don't really know where this is going to go, but we know that with wearables and with the opportunity to become more connected in the Internet of Things, when our shoes are connected, our fridges are connected, this is only going to grow. So that I could conceivably be booking a flight while I'm cooking my dinner. It is possible. Twitter has always been mobile first. So from the first tweet sent in March 2006, this was sent on mobile. And so Jack Dorsey and our founders, they were looking at the fact that mobile was going to be important. And this is where our origins are. So we're still mobile first. Everything we consider is mobile first. We're no longer just a one single product platform. We have acquired a lot of other companies like Gnip that looks at social listening and so on. But our fundamentals are very much mobile. And if you look at the impact and the influence that the audience brings, over half of those are influenced to purchase down the funnel, whether that's upper funnel objectives or lower funnel objectives. Our clients, consumers that are using Twitter, according to Nielsen's path to purchase, are actively influenced by content that they're seeing. And I don't have data specifically to share with you on video, but we know that video is becoming even more engaging, and we're seeing really good results there too. So, if we look at an example of a business that has actually seen this lift in ROI on Twitter, I think Six Flags is a good example. This is a visitor attraction in the US, and they run a series of theme parks. And not to target outside the regions that they were interested in, they ran a very targeted campaign that was geolocated. And they were able to see that the ROI on their investment in Twitter grew threefold. And brand mentions increased by 5.4x. Their marketing director was delighted with the impact in sales, but also the brand impact that they saw through the campaign. So how do you become mobile first with Twitter? Whether it's about your own account and growing your own follower base, if you're a travel blogger, for example, or whether you're on behalf of a travel brand. Our targeting has really evolved in the last 12 months. I think if you look back even 6 months to Twitter's product, we have changed fundamentally what we've done. We have innovated and expanded the opportunities to engage with consumers so granularly. Whether it's about engaging with your own customers through tailored audiences, so that's about speaking directly to people that you know have booked a flight or stayed with you before, or finding people who look like them. This is the kinds of targeting that you can explore on Twitter. But I'm going to focus in on TV because the TV targeting piece, to me, is probably one of the most unique elements that Twitter targeting offers. We know that 66% of mobile users in the UK are using Twitter while watching TV. So this trend of dual screening, we also see that the impact on campaigns grows significantly when you combine Twitter and TV. And that's according to research that Starcom Media Vest did with us, and we released at Cannes. So the impact of this dual screening is really strong. And one of the brands that has really seen this, so they're working at Tourism Ireland. This is a sneak preview because this isn't actually a published case study yet. But Mark, if you're here, thank you for letting us talk about it today. But essentially, Tourism Ireland understood this trend, or they at least saw this trend. They saw that people were consuming Twitter while on TV. And if you didn't know before, you're going to know now that Game of Thrones was actually filmed in the north of Ireland. And so they really wanted to link Game of Thrones with the beautiful countryside of Northern Ireland that inspired, and you know, many of you have been inspired by in seeing Game of Thrones. So they targeted conversations around this. They targeted people who were interested in Game of Thrones or talking about Game of Thrones, and they presented tweets such as this one you see behind me on mobile before these people. So very much tapping into this trend, innovating, understanding that there is a trend and jumping on it. And they saw, you know, up to 9% engagement on these tweets and just under 10 million impressions for this campaign. Highly segmented, highly targeted, very granular. So I'm going to just give you a little bit more insight to, you know, what other brands have done in terms of using the Twitter products. I just mentioned that, you know, we've put a lot of work into our targeting. We've also put a lot of work into our ad formats. So the formats that you see on mobile now are much more engaging, much more media rich. And so, you know, here is an example of how enterprise has been able to use a format that we call the website card. The website card is essentially an expanded banner that is linking natively within Twitter timeline directly to the website. So this is very effective in driving clicks to your website if website traffic is the objective. And you can see here cards like the lead generation card. So taking it a step further in capturing the data of people who are interested in your brand or in your service. Kayak and Cruise Norwegian have used this product. Building brand awareness, of course, promoted tweets. You know, you can see here Virgin America, and you can see Hyatt when they actually used that opportunity to build the brand in advance. They saw great gains because they were able to quickly build a group of people that might be interested in the campaign. And mobile app installs and engagement. So a lot of the research I'm reading at the moment on travel is that travel is dominating the App Store and Google Play. So, you know, this is something that many of you are maybe considering, or you observe a lot of travel apps that are basically adding value to our lives on a daily basis. And these can be driven through Twitter as well, but also re-engagement. Because what we find is that when you download a number of apps on your phone, likely you use the top 10 most often. So re-engaging people in this and encouraging them to come back to the app is something that we support brands like Kayak in doing. And video, I'm going to show you just a really quick video of the video card so that you can actually experience it for yourself. But, you know, video is the biggest thing, I think, that's going to hit next year. And it's already here, and brands are using it like Myrtle Beach and Airbnb. But here's an example of how it actually works.
Here we are on the road together, racing time, you and I, trying to climb the snakes and ladders and block the shine and blind your eyes. 'Cause it's easy to feel weighed down, and it's easy to blame ourselves when the sky is filled up with clouds raining down, yeah. 'Cause it's you and me against the world now. We're alright. It's you and me against the world now. We're alright. 'Cause it's you and me against the
about you, but very exciting stuff, and I think it really embraces that, in-the-moment excitement that a brand can convey through video. Sorry, it's going on again. So just going to give you a little bit of an update on what's new in terms of e-commerce at Twitter. Not a massive amount I can say about this, I'm afraid, so I'm probably going to disappoint you and Steve later in the Q&A. But essentially, what we're trialing in beta at the moment in the US is click to buy in the stream. So while you're viewing your timeline within Twitter, you'll actually be able to buy a product or a service or donate, for example, to a charity. You can imagine travel opportunities within that, within a series of a handful of clicks. So I'm going to show you how it works because it's so easy, and essentially it takes the credit card details and the click to buy is very swift. Here we go. I hope you can see it. You can see here it's click to buy, and then you just come down and you decide what size t-shirt you want if you're a Taylor Swift fan, put your shipping in, confirm purchase, and save within about 5 clicks. So today, I hope I've left you with a couple of actions to take home. The first is all about relevancy. So how are you as a brand, or in fact a travel blogger engaging with an audience, thinking about the right moment, the right audience, and the right message, and how you find those moments and capitalize on them? And second of all, how are you using Twitter and the data that's out there, the heartbeat of data that's telling you like what your consumers are thinking? How are you using that? How are you listening to that? How are you pivoting in your strategy, and how are you responding? Think and live in beta. Understand that we are not in an era where things will stay the same. Things are changing exponentially, and we need to listen and understand to be able to react. And thirdly, think mobile first. So how are you putting mobile at the heart of your marketing strategy? And if you aren't, how you can take those steps to do so. Thank you.
Eva. Come join me.
Thank you.
Join me.
Could I get a little bit of water?
Please do.
Sorry, thanks.
Very interesting to see, well, so much to come out of that. Why is David Cameron on a landline when he's on Twitter?
Good question. Good question. I'm not so sure that David does his own tweets, but we'll see.
No.
I'm not so sure.
But very good to get a Star Trek actor to actually talk about Twitter, and David Cameron being seen on a landline is not that impressive.
I'm glad you liked it.
It's good. As Eva alluded to, as it's not just the only company in tech and mobile and social these days, they're not able to talk as much as they'd like to because it's such a fast-changing pace of development, and they don't want to give too much away. But I must come straight to the buy button.
Okay.
Because that is fascinating. Mm-hmm. Is that in the US only at the moment?
It is. So we're trialing with a selected group of different verticals, mainly retail, e-commerce, and you've seen how it works. I don't have any results that I can share or any kind of roadmap or anything, but it's certainly in beta at the moment.
And is there any timetable for rollout across the rest of the world?
That I can't say.
Okay. But we had Facebook yesterday in a session, and they were making many of the same points you are. The simplicity now. The noise is getting louder, the volume is bigger. People want to cut through that and be able to buy or watch simply and quickly, and that must be part of the premise of your decision to go down the buy button route.
Yeah, I think, in general, I can't say what informed the decision to go down the buy route because that isn't part of what I do at Twitter, but it is certainly, something that I personally see that our attention spans aren't getting any greater while we're expected to consume a huge amount of data. So I was yesterday at the Web Summit, and talking at that was John Sculley from Apple, former CEO of Apple, and he was talking about, just concretely, that the amount of data that we had back 20 years ago could fill something like, I think it was something like 3,000 Boeing 347s or 747s. And that's just grown to 46,000 of them. He was kind of trying to conceptualize what that is. But yet, we as humans can't take all of that in. So we are seeking simplicity, or we're seeking apps that understand us. So today, I just used Airport Porter, for example. They targeted me in my room, and I saw hashtag luggage freedom and responded to that. So I think it's all about, how is my life going to be made easier in my travel choices, and how can you kind of embrace those?
Well, you gave some piece of research suggesting that 25% of travel sales will be on mobile by 2015. But these are quite simplistic products, aren't they? It's a hotel room tonight, or it's what other sort of travel products are going to sell in that way on mobile?
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
I think it's 25% of travel sales will be on mobile by 2015.
Of online. So 25% of online US travel sales, according to TechCrunch. And I think there are lots of different data sources that you can pull. But essentially, they're predicting that 25% of all our online transactions will be mobile by next year. Yeah.
But these are quite simplistic products which will sell on mobile, which are hotels primarily?
I mean, they haven't necessarily broken that down. I haven't seen that specifically per sub-vertical. But I think the opportunities are endless. For example, I'm a business traveler today, but I'll blur in between business and leisure. And yet, no brand has engaged with me today to see how I could maybe dine at their restaurant, or how I could have a richer experience while in London. So I think there's a lot of scope for us to anticipate those needs and to respond in real time.
Interesting, though, is there probably was a peak, I wouldn't know if people would agree with this, but with the voucher companies a year or two ago. But that sort of initial interest paled because the volume of offers and deals you were being sent became a bit overwhelming. People switched it off. Can you see that sort of issue coming as well, where you're being sold too much on mobile?
I just think it's the way that we will evolve. So, if the next purchase for me is an iWatch, I'm going to use it. And there will be a subset of people who are not engaging in that, as there always will be. But they will be probably the minority.
No, I don't disagree with any of this. A friend of mine is a gardener. She sells cut flowers, and she reckons 83% of her sales come through Twitter. But she'll put out a bouquet at that time for this price. It's an easy purchase. It's not a buy button. It will be 100%, I presume, after that. Is there any sort of best practice you can give to travel brands and companies? There's a very diverse audience, so we can't say it's one thing or the other. But that sort of best practice of selling on Twitter in the current format.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably about building a relationship. If the relationship, it's a bit like, I remember using this analogy before, it's like a dinner party where, you have 12 people and one person is constantly talking and hogging the discussion. So you don't necessarily, as a brand, want to engage in buy, this offer, this offer, this offer, but rather build a relationship that is relevant. So in the way that KLM is doing, they're being relevant to me even when I'm not considering booking a flight. So when I come to book a flight, I'm much more predisposed to wanting to work with them, for example, or to book with them. So I suppose what I'm saying is, measure your content, have a content calendar. So whether you're a cafe, a small business, or a big brand, you really need to have like an understanding of what your content for the coming week, coming month, coming year might look like. And of course, you have lots of things that come up in the moment that change that or make you feel like you have to pivot away from that. But if you don't have like a base content calendar, then you're going to have a problem. And I think we've seen brands like Coca-Cola. We had a talk recently by Wendy Clark at Coca-Cola where she talked about the fact that silence is no longer an option. And she has a team that are dedicated to understanding what the content will look like. And that's globally. You can imagine the operation required to manage that, but they're doing that. So I think lots of brands have scope to create content that is appealing and shareable.
You mentioned Coca-Cola there, you mentioned KLM, Airbnb. Is Twitter just going to be for big brands for selling, or is it going to be an SME model as well?
So, we already have advertising for SMBs, and today we launched in the Nordics. So if you're from the Nordics and haven't so far been able to do that, you'll be able to do that from today. So here, there's a link at the end of my presentation, which is biz.twitter.com. It's absolutely not just for big brands.
Okay.
So big brands are moving towards looking at Twitter as the glue to their campaigns. But just like that San Lorenzo example I shared, this restaurant in Dublin is listening. Maybe there's downtime in the restaurant and there's nothing to do, and instead of polishing the silver again, they're able to look quickly at Twitter and see what is the world saying and react.
Well, it's also summed up in a quote earlier in your piece in one of the videos about reacting to the speed of the change of culture. I mean, it's exhausting, isn't it? It's knackering how quickly it's moving on like that. We're having to do that. That's why everybody here is listening to you today. Moving on from that, the video you showed, seemed to be quite a long video. That was about a minute long.
Yeah.
That was Xbox that was showing it.
Yeah, the Xbox video was long.
Are people, given that speed of change, going to watch a minute video all the way through on Twitter?
Yeah, it's funny, they do. People do. And I think that's, the video product is different because there's no limit to the length. It can be 15 seconds, it can be 3 seconds. A Vine, one of our products, is 6-second video format. So, and you can see the amazing creative things that people have done with Vine. Attention spans are short, but we still have the problem of sitting on the tube for many hours a day and having to engage with something. We're bored, so we tend to, instead of picking a book out of our bags, look at our phones.
But then we only go to the same 10 apps. We get rid of the rest at the end of the day, so that's interesting as well.
It's about re-engaging those people.
Talking about spans of attention, we've only got about 5, probably 10 minutes. And bearing in mind, if I can't address all the questions I'm sure you'd like to ask, we still have the opportunity for some questions from the floor. So I'm not sure where the roving microphone is at this stage, but if we can get some house lights up to help see some hands, that would be handy. Is there a microphone around? Coming down. So we've got a chap in the front row here, first off, in the blue shirt. Could you tell us where you're from, please, and your company?
Hi, I'm Vinay. I run a travel startup and I'm also a student. And Twitter has been great in terms of marketing. My question is between personalization versus privacy. I think brands want to be as personal as possible, which is great. On the other hand, there's a huge hue and cry about privacy. Does Twitter face this challenge? And what are the steps you're probably taking in this regard?
So, great question. I mean, privacy is a very dominant topic in tech. I attended a session on it yesterday, which was NSA against The Guardian. Interesting. Of course, privacy is crucial. I think the big difference for Twitter is it's a public platform. So people are public on it. We don't insist on own name accounts. So there is a level of anonymity on Twitter that there isn't on other platforms. But also, we see that probably about 60% of people are tweeting, while the rest of the world are actually consuming. So if you look back to MH370 and all of the horrific things we see in these world events, we probably didn't see it. We didn't tweet about it potentially, but we probably heard it first on Twitter, or it was syndicated across media. So there's a balance between the editors of content on Twitter and the consumers of content on Twitter. And privacy, it's a public platform.
Thank you. Is there any other questions we can see out there? Is it JD over there I see on the left?
Yes, I have a question. My name is Shane Dallas. I'm a travel blogger, and I blog under the name The Travel Camel. Twitter has changed my life. Twitter, without a doubt, is the most effective platform for travel. There's one thing a lot of people mentioned about smaller ways that smaller businesses can get involved. Get involved in Twitter chats. I actually founded one called TRLT, The Road Less Travelled. We celebrated a year last night. I had 400 interactions in an hour. There are places out there. You've got TTOT, Travel Talk on Twitter. You've got Johnny Jet in the US Starts, Travel Skills. Get involved in these conversations. It doesn't cost much. There's a site called travellogx.com. It's not my website. Go have a look, and at least 50, 60 travel Twitter chats a week. Get in there, get involved. and that is the easiest way to get an audience if you are a small operator. Have you got any other comments to make on travel Twitter chats?
I do. I mean, thank you so much, and congratulations on your high engagement in your chat. Yeah, you know, we see the same, very similar. I think you should be up here presenting for me next year. But essentially, Expedia Chat, for example, has done brilliant things with their chat. They have a regular hashtag Expedia Chat that occurs, you know, on a weekly basis. People anticipate it, they understand it, and you can really engage with a highly engaged audience around that.
And have that conversation afterwards, but it's absolutely true. And it's not becoming travel talk on Twitter, it's becoming cruise, it's becoming much more niche, and that I would expect to develop as well in the future. Create your own group on there. And also, it's interesting argument about claiming a hashtag. You can't say it's your hashtag, but if you get enough noise on that name, or we were talking yesterday with a ski operator about Powder Ski, is that too generic a title? Probably is, but if he can attach all that to all of his tweets, he's going to become known as the Powder Ski Man. Now, probably time for one more question from the audience. There must be hundreds. So is there one at the back that a hand I can't see? I'm sure there probably is. It's your last chance. Oh, there is. One last one over here on the right. Please, on the far side. And then we'll need to wrap.
Thank you. I'm Carol. I'm from Concept. We're a marketing consultancy for brands in Europe and Asia to expand locally and globally. Quick questions on one of your products called Vine. I know it's been launched for like maybe 2 or 3 years, and many brands want to tap into that and use it for branding, but it's been like a bit difficult for brands to use it. In particular, for travel brands, can you recommend some ways for brands to use Vine to engage with the audience?
Yes, I mean, I'll do my best. I'm not a Vine expert as such, because we have a whole team dedicated to Vine. I think what we've seen with Vine, you know, it's 6 seconds for a start. So 6 seconds, you can imagine you have to be highly creative to optimize for 6 seconds. But we have seen, you know, a lot of creativity come from the Vine community themselves. So some of the most successful campaigns that brands have adopted have actually had origins in Vine users creating wacky ideas that brands jumped on and encouraged them to help them to create that. So if you're seeking support, I would go to the Vine community and go into travel as a channel and understand what kind of content is coming out, and approach those vloggers, because the Vine community is, again, a very passionate community of people that are very highly creative, and we've seen a lot of Vine stars come from those origins.
I hope that helps, and I would also suggest animation, which seems to be the most successful format for 6-second Vines. You can do so much more in animation than you can do with a camera in that time. I'd like to thank you very much indeed. I'd like to thank primarily Aoife Desmond for spending time with us on Twitter today. It's taken a long time to get them here, but whatever they say on Facebook, you've got to listen to, because they are the dominant players. So thank you very much, please, to Aoife Desmond for her time.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming. We've now got Airbnb, which should be equally entertaining and topical, is the next speaker. And we've then got 3 sessions on startups. So if any of you in the crowd want to see what's happening, what people are thinking about these days, starting at 2 o'clock, we're going to have fresh funding, where to find the money, how to take your startup from this place to an established player, and a 3rd session as well, some very, very good, where to base your startup, which is fascinating. So please stick with us for the afternoon. We're going to be here till 3:30, and thank you for coming so far this afternoon. Thank you.